Along with ads, creating in-app purchases in your apps is another great way of generating revenue without having to charge for the initial download. It's now estimated that over half of the whole revenue from the App Store is through in-app purchases, so this is clearly a good way to go for some types of apps. Here I've got the Apple developer site in-app purchase page in front of me, and we're just going to have a quick look at the different types of purchase that you can make through in-app purchases, because you can't just sell anything you like. Down here these are the particular things that we're going to look at. So first of all, we've got things like consumables. So if you buy bonuses in a game or money in a gambling app or something like that, that would be a consumable and could be something that you could buy again and again. A non-consumable might be something like upgrading to the pro version of an app, and that would be something that you would only buy once per copy of the app. Auto-renewable subscriptions are what you might suspect, so they're subscriptions that renew, say, every month. Free subscriptions we're not going to be spending much time on, they're specific to the Newsstand app. The non-renewing subscriptions are subscriptions that last a certain amount of time but don't renew automatically. So you might buy 1 month access to a particular app, but then you might not want that to be automatically renewed for whatever reason. So those are the different types of sale that you can make with in-app purchases. It's worth just having a quick look at these guidelines to make sure that you're not aiming to sell anything that's not allowed. Specifically, real-world goods and services are the big one that you're not allowed to use in-app purchases for. But there's a few other warnings there, so have a quick look at that just to make sure your app doesn't break any of those rules. Alright, so deciding that you want to go ahead with in-app purchases, we're going to use Pass to work with in-app purchases because that makes the whole process much, much simpler. So we're going to create a new Pass app. And you can see all my test and demo apps are there. So we're going to call this in-app purchases. There we go. And then normally we would go to the quick start guide and then data, mobile, iOS, Swift, new project, and then download the blank Xcode project. If Pass has been updated for Xcode 7 and Swift 2, then I'd recommend doing that. If that's not the case yet, or if in doubt, go over to my blog, robpercival.co.uk, and find the post Pass working on Xcode 7 Swift 2 and download from there. So as I'm recording this, we're on Xcode 7 Beta 2, so I'm going to download that version to my desktop. There we go. So either way, and then I'm just going to click to unzip that. And then we'll jump over to Finder and double click on the zip file, and here we go. Here's our Pass starter project. So I'm going to rename the folder straight away so I know what I'm working with. In-app purchases. And then we'll just start by loading this up in Xcode and making the necessary changes to run Pass, which is essentially setting the application and client ID. So go back over to Pass and then copy and paste. Obviously don't use my application ID and client key, but copy what you've got there for your app, and then jump back over and just replace the lines with the triple X's in with what you've got there. And let's just quickly run that just to make sure that we're connecting to Pass and everything as well, and then we'll see how to set up our in-app purchases. There we go. So we've got our notifications, request, and it looks like the object has been saved. If you remember, the default code in this app just saves a test object to the Pass backend. Great. So now we need to go through the fairly lengthy process of setting up our app to use in-app purchases. And we're going to do that over in the Apple developer portal. So that's developer.apple.com. There we go. As you might have guessed, you do need a paid Apple developer account for this, but that's fair enough given that you need a paid account to put apps on the App Store anyway. So if you haven't got one, then follow the instructions in the previous lecture on how to get one. So I'm going to click Member Center and then log in with my Apple account details. Then we want to work with certificates. So click on Certificates, Identifiers and Profiles. Then click Certificates. Here we go. So I've got a few already set up. You may have if you've done some other things with certificates before, but we want to create a new one. And we're in development here. So we're going to create a development certificate. When you're ready to actually publish your app, you need to follow the same process, but create a production certificate and then go through the rest of the process. For now though, we're in development, so click Next. Then we need to create a CSR file, which is a certificate signing request, which just allows us to use the certificate with our app. And you can see you do this using the keychain access. So I usually open Spotlight using Command Space and then start typing keychain access. And then we use keychain access up here and certificate assistant and request a certificate from a certificate authority. There we go. And then you put in your email address, put your name, and then I usually use the same email. And I normally go for save to disk. It's a bit quicker than having it emailed to you. But if you want it emailed to you, that works fine. And I'm just going to use the default file name and save it on the desktop. There we go. I don't need to show it in Finder, but that's been done. So now we're in a position to upload the CSR file. So just click Choose File, and there it is on the desktop. Click Open, and then Generate. And there we go. So now we have our certificate. It's been generated and we can download it. Again, I'm going to just download it to the desktop. There we go. Next, we need to enable in-app purchases for the specific ID of the app that we're creating. So let's first just jump back to Xcode and change the app ID. So we've got the bundle identifier here. So I'm going to change it to com.appfish.in-app purchases. There we go. And I would copy that to the clipboard so there's no danger of mistyping it over here. Okay, so now let's create a new app ID by clicking the plus, and I'm just going to call it in-app purchases again. And we want to specify a specific app ID. So we're going to put that right in there exactly as it was over in Xcode. And then you can see we've got already selected by default, in fact, is in-app purchase right there. So that's great. We can continue. And that's now been registered for in-app purchases. Great. Excellent. All right, we're almost there. We just need to set up our app in iTunes Connect. So just have a quick Google for iTunes Connect. This is where you manage all of your apps. If you're already logged in, then it will probably take you straight to the homepage. Otherwise, you'll need to log in with your Apple ID and then click My Apps. And then we want to create a new app. So just click the plus there, and we want a new iOS app. So the name is in-app purchases. Obviously that's an awful name to actually use if you're going to publish to the App Store. I wouldn't use anything like that, but it'll do for now. So I'm going to use UK English for the language, bundle ID, now I had to actually refresh the page to get my new app to appear there, so it might be that it takes a few minutes for the app to actually create. So you might want to go and have a cup of tea if necessary, but you need to select the correct bundle ID there. Version, if we just go back to Xcode, you can see we've got default version of 1.7.5. That's the version of Parse that we're using, but really that's not the correct version of our app. So I'm going to change that to 1.0 and the build to 1.0 as well. And just make sure that that's set correctly everywhere. Yep, that's fine. So now we can go back and set that. The SKU is a unique identifier for your app, which the obvious choice is to just use the same thing as your bundle ID. You can use something else there if you want. It won't be visible on the App Store, but unless you have a particular reason to, I just use the same as the bundle ID. And then click Create. That will then create the app for you in iTunes Connect. And here it is. So now we can add an in-app purchase by clicking in-app purchases there. So we want to create a new one. So let's click Create New. And this is where we choose what type of purchase that we want. So I'm going to go for a simple consumable. You can try this with any of these. So the reference name is the name of the product that will appear when the user tries to purchase it. So I'm just going to pick something random. Let's call it gold. And then the product ID is what we're going to use in our app code to reference this particular product. So I'll just go for gold with a lowercase g, but you can use whatever you like there. And then we're going to choose yes for cleared for sale. And you can choose a price tier. I'm going to go for tier 1. We can have a look at the pricing matrix here. So tier 1 is around 99 cents in whatever currency the user is working in. You can have a little look and see what the other tiers are as well, if you like. Then we just need to add a language. So we'll go for UK English. We'll call the display name gold, and then the description, I'll just put some gold. And if you thought that your app was going to be used by people in a number of different languages, you might want to put different names for the in-app purchase there. Okay, we're not going to put any review notes. We do need to upload an image. Now, normally this would be an image of how our in-app purchase actually works, so what it is, and it would go with our review notes here. But I'm just going to use a demo image here. You can see here that we've got some specific dimensions that we need, so you can really upload any image in those dimensions if you're just testing. If you want to get an image that's in the correct dimensions, you can get one from iosdevelopercourse.com/demo.png. So that will give you an image in the correct dimensions. There you go. So you can just save that by control clicking and then saving it to the desktop. There we go. Or you can create one of your own, of course. Then we just upload it. So choose file and then select that image. And finally, we should be in a position to save our in-app purchase. So it's a specific product. There we go. So now we've created our in-app purchase. Now we're going to jump over to Xcode, and the rest of the setup will be done here. So the first setting that we need to change is to allow the project to use automatic provisioning, and then it will be able to use the certificate that we created right at the beginning of the video. So click on the project up there and then click Build Settings, and then I'll do a little search for provisioning. So there we go, provisioning profile, and it's already on automatic. So that's fine, we don't need to change that. And then we look for the code signing identity, and this should be iOS developer for both. There we go. So if you've used my demo project, then you shouldn't have to change anything here, but it's worth checking just to make sure that everything's set up correctly. Next, we need to enable in-app purchases for our app, and we do that by clicking the Past Starter Project target and then clicking Capabilities. And you can see we've got a number of different capabilities that we could enable here, some of which will probably be familiar to you. The one that we want is in-app purchase. So let's switch that on. And if you've done everything correctly, then your development account should appear there. So you just choose that one. And then this should set everything up automatically for you. So it's linked the StoreKit framework. We now need to add the in-app purchase entitlement to our app ID. That should happen automatically as well. There we go. Seemed to take 2 attempts there, but it did happen in the end. Excellent. Now, finally, we're in a position to write our code, which is actually, compared to everything we've done so far, pretty simple. So if I just direct you back to the Parse iOS documentation, so it's parse.com/docs/iOS, then we can get our code from here, which is what I'd recommend because it could be that they've updated it since I've made this video. So scroll down, you can see we've got in-app purchases right there. So this will give us 2 chunks of code. The first will be a chunk of code that will initiate a purchase, so allow the user to make a purchase of our product. And then the other is, let's make sure we're in Swift here, a add observer for product. So this method will be called whenever a product has actually been purchased. So let's scroll down and get the first bit. So the buy product code is what we want. So we're just going to select that and then paste it over our creation code. So if you remember, the product that we created had a product code of gold. So that's the only product that we've got here. So that's the product that we're going to need. There we go. Now, unfortunately, doing in-app purchases in the simulator is rather flaky and doesn't work every time. So feel free to give it a try. But I've found, particularly in this version of Xcode and with the simulator here, I haven't been able to get the buy product method working. But you'd really need to test that on a real device anyway. So really what we're doing here is just making sure that we don't get any errors. So here we haven't got any errors apart from this push notifications warning. So this almost certainly would work fine if we ran it on a real device. So the only other thing that we'd need to set up is some code to do something when the product has been purchased. So that would obviously depend on what your app was and what it was you were selling. Worth checking here that if you're selling a downloadable product, you can integrate that very easily with Parse just by following the instructions here. So you set it up in the data browser and then just add code very similar to what we've just added, but one that allows the user to download the product that they've just purchased. So that's really easy. There we go. So the actual code that you need to make an in-app purchase is almost negligible, just 4 or 5 lines, but the process to set everything up is reasonably complicated. But I hope you managed to get this far, and I hope then you go further and test your app on a real device and get in-app purchases fully working in your apps.